Greetings, everyone, and welcome to TVS Correspondent with me, Radzi Ahmad, and as always, our correspondent from the United States of America, Alfian Zaini. How are you today?
Thank you, Radzi. I'm doing fine. Hope you are doing fine too.
I'm doing great. Thank you. I'd like to begin today with former President Trump's impeachment trial that had just ended as of this recording. As you may know, Trump was impeached for whipping up a mob that stormed the Capitol building on January 6th. Alfian, what can you tell us about this impeachment trial and explain the charges for Trump's impeachment?
Indeed, Radzi. Today is yet another historic day in the U.S. as the 5 days Trump impeachment trial was concluded just a few hours ago, with him being acquitted from the charge of inciting the infamous mayhem and insurrection surrounding the nation's capital on January 6th. The siege of the Capitol had costed the lives of 3 police officers and left more than 70 others injured. Most importantly to the people, January 6th is a date that will live in infamy, in which the U.S. democracy has never been so threatened with lawlessness provoked by its own president. Nonetheless, the fact that they succeeded in delaying the certification of the presidential vote that day was a cause for great concerns for future generations to come.
A very tumultuous time for Americans indeed, when the president himself is inciting violence. Alfian, you said Trump was acquitted from the charge. By what margin of votes in the Senate was he acquitted by, Alfian?
Although majority of the 100 Senate members voted guilty, they did not make the 2/3 majority needed to convict Trump for engaging in a rebellion against U.S. Constitution, violating his oath to protect and serve the people and the country. Just short by 10 votes, Trump was acquitted from the impeachment with 57 votes of guilty and 43 votes of not guilty from members of the Senate.
That's a very surprising conclusion indeed, considering the seriousness of the charge. Trump seems to be getting lucky time and time again because he's the only president in the U.S. history that has ever been impeached twice. What other historical firsts transpired from this trial, Alfian?
A few notable history was made from this trial. One of it is it's only lasted for 5 days. It was the shortest impeachment trial ever. And another historical note that we can make from this trial is the results. It is with the most bipartisan vote, meaning there are 7 Republican senators that were unexpectedly voted guilty along with the rest of the Democrats. This was the first time ever also in an impeachment trial that the Senate members are also the judges, they are also the jurors, and they are also the witnesses, because most of them were sieged in the Capitol on January 6th while certifying the electoral votes.
In the impeachment trial itself, how did the House impeachment managers build their case against Trump?
House impeachment managers built up their case with multitudes of evidence that the insurrection was premeditated and demonstrably foreseeable from his fiery speeches towards the end of his presidential rallies. Trump has been cultivating his supporters that the election results is rigged and they should fight for their rights. This had started even months prior to January 6th, with the most obvious one being his speech to his supporters on that day itself. I quote, one of his remarks was, "We are going to the Capitol and we fight like hell. If we don't fight like hell, we're not going to have a country anymore."
And how did Trump's defense team respond to this?
Trump defense mainly debated that Trump's words in his campaigns and rallies are no more than a political rhetoric, metaphors that he has no direct control over his supporters if they choose to take them literally to the streets. His rights to freedom of speech is also protected by the First Amendment of the Constitution.
Was this a defense that successfully acquitted Trump from the charges, or was the acquittal based on some technicality? And does this mean that former President Trump is now scot-free of the charges?
In a bizarre end, the minority, or basically the Republican leader, Mitch McConnell, admitted that there is no doubt that Trump is guilty, even though he voted for not guilty. With all the evidence put forth by the impeachment managers, they could not vote him guilty because of the constitutional technicality. Whereas Trump is no longer a president, and only a president, a VP, and civil servants are eligible for an impeachment, because the results of impeachment upon conviction is removal from office. If removal cannot be done or is not possible, then conviction is simply not sensible. He mentioned that Trump, however, is still liable as a private citizen for his actions while he was in office. He didn't get away with anything yet and still can be prosecuted. Their decision today is based on the limited constitutional jurisdiction of the Senate, and it's not about condoning this insurrection on January 6th. That's what he said. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to think that the actions of Mitch McConnell is very contradictory indeed. That is a very surprising turn of events indeed for Trump's impeachment trial. Alfian, thank you very much for the insight. We'll be right back after this short commercial break with TVS Correspondent. Don't go anywhere. You're now tuned in to TVS Correspondent with me, Radzi Ahmad, and our correspondent from the US, Alfian Zaini. Now, I'd like to jump in on the COVID-19 situation in the US. Alfian, what's it like over there?
Well, I'm glad to say that for the first time in 100 days, the United States is averaging fewer than 100,000 new COVID-19 cases per day, according to data from Johns Hopkins University. The nation has current 7-day average of 96,000 new cases per day, according to the data. The last time this metric was below 100,000 was on the election day, November 3rd last year. On that day, the US saw an average of 925 deaths per day. Right now, the US is seeing an average of 3,000 deaths per day, which is more than 200% increase in daily deaths since November. Over those 100 days from November 3rd until February 12th, the US tallied 18 million new COVID-19 cases and 248,000 reported deaths, according to the same data.
Well, those are very alarming numbers indeed, especially when you compare it to the rest of the world. In Malaysia, the numbers are steadily increasing day by day, but nowhere near that number. We also have good news, though, of the COVID-19 vaccine from Moderna and Pfizer being approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. When can Americans expect to receive the vaccine, Alfian?
On Thursday, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Dr. Anthony Fauci, said that the U.S. could start letting the general public, not just for the priority groups, have access to COVID-19 vaccines in April, as early as April, and the country may be able to inoculate most Americans by the middle of the end of the summer. He also added that the vaccines could be authorized for young children by September. Pfizer and Moderna, the two companies currently with authorized COVID-19 vaccines in the US, have both begun trials for children, but have started with older age groups first.
Well, hopefully the vaccine distribution process will go smoothly and without any trouble, not just in America, but also for the rest of the world. Moving on, the rest of the world seems to be lifting restrictions, but also imposing lockdowns according to their situation. In terms of lockdown and restrictions, what is happening over there in America, Alfian?
It was reported that more states in the US are loosening COVID-19 restrictions despite warnings about more transmissible variants increasingly appearing in the country. Almost at least 1,000 cases reported so far for those new variants. Restrictions lifted includes, for some states, reopening of stadiums, arenas, and allowing restaurants to operate with limited capacity and strict guidelines. Dr. Barney Graham, Chief of the Lab and Deputy Director of the Vaccine Research Center at the National Institute of Health, told the president Thursday that the current coronavirus vaccines should work against variants of the virus.
Thank you, Alfian. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Alfian, thank you once again for your time.
Until next time, take care, folks.
Looking forward to it. Well, that's all the time we have for today on TVS Correspondent. We'll see you next time.